I should have noticed the way Rebecca's fingers trembled when she handed me my coffee that Tuesday morning. Not nervous trembling, the kind you get from too much caffeine, but something else entirely. Like she was holding something fragile that might shatter if she gripped it too tight. But I was too busy reviewing the Henderson account spreadsheets, muttering about decimal points that refused to align, and I just took the mug without looking up. "David," she said, and there was that tone. The one that made my spine straighten automatically after 12 years of marriage. "We need to talk tonight." I glanced at her then. Rebecca stood in the doorway of my home office, backlit by the hallway light, wearing her gray blazer, the one she'd bought for important meetings. Her dark hair was pulled back in that severe ponytail she only wore when she meant business. At 34, she still had that determined look that had first caught my attention at a conference in Chicago, back when I was still pretending to enjoy networking events. "Can't tonight," I said, already looking back at my screen. "The Henderson presentation is Thursday, and Marcus keeps changing the—" "It's about work," she interrupted. "My work." That made me pause. Rebecca was a senior marketing director at Stratton and Hale, a pharmaceutical company that had recently been making waves with some new merger. She rarely brought work home, said it helped her maintain boundaries. The fact that she was bringing it up now at 6:47 a.m., while I was drowning in my own deadlines, felt off. "Okay," I said slowly. "What's up?" She glanced at her watch, that vintage Cartier her father had given her when she made director. Another tell. Rebecca only checked that watch when she was calculating something. "Tonight," she repeated. "I'll explain everything tonight." Then she was gone, her heels clicking down the hardwood stairs, the front door closing with its usual soft thud. Through the window, I watched her silver Audi pull out of the driveway of our modest two-story in Westchester. Everything looked normal. Everything looked exactly like it had for the past 12 years. Except for those trembling fingers. I'm an architect, which means I'm trained to notice when things don't quite fit, when a load-bearing wall is missing, when the foundation has a crack, when someone's tried to cover up shoddy work with fancy finishes. My job is literally finding the flaws before they become catastrophes. So why didn't I see what was coming? Maybe because I'd been so focused on not seeing the other cracks, the ones I'd been mentally spackling over for months. Like how Rebecca had started going to the gym at 5 a.m. instead of after work. Better energy throughout the day, she'd said, which made sense. Except she'd also bought all new workout clothes, expensive Lululemon stuff that seemed more suited for brunch than a treadmill. Or how she'd changed her perfume. Not dramatically, just a subtle shift from the vanilla-based scent she'd worn since college to something with more citrus notes. When I'd mentioned it, she'd laughed and said the store had discontinued her old brand. I'd even checked. The store hadn't discontinued anything. Or the way her phone had suddenly acquired a password lock. "So many work emails with confidential information," she'd explained. "We'd always had an open phone policy. Not because we were checking up on each other, but because we'd never needed to hide anything. Until suddenly, apparently, we did. I told myself these were nothing. People change. People evolve. Marriage isn't about monitoring every tiny shift in behavior like some paranoid detective. I wasn't that guy. I refused to be that guy. But those fingers, those trembling fingers. The day crawled by in a blur of CAD drawings and client calls. Marcus, my business partner, noticed I was distracted during our 3 o'clock meeting with the Henderson team. "You good?" he asked afterward, loosening his tie in that way he always did when he was concerned. Marcus and I had met in grad school, bonded over a mutual hatred of postmodernist architecture, and started our firm 5 years ago. He knew me well enough to spot when something was off. "Rebecca wants to talk tonight," I said. "About work." "About work." Marcus raised an eyebrow. He was happily married to Tom, a high school teacher, and they had the kind of easy relationship I used to think Rebecca and I had. "That's specific." "Yeah. You think it's about the merger?" Tom mentioned something about Stratton and Hale on the news. Big deal, apparently. Federal approval needed, international implications, the whole 9 yards. I nodded vaguely. Rebecca had mentioned the merger. Stratton and Hale was planning to merge with some European pharmaceutical giant, creating one of the largest healthcare companies in the world. It was the kind of career-defining project that could catapult her into VP territory. She'd been excited about it for months. But why would she need to talk to me about it? I left the office at 5:30, earlier than usual, and stopped at Moretti's to pick up dinner. The chicken marsala she loved, extra mushrooms. A peace offering for whatever conversation was coming. The young woman at the counter, whose name tag read Sienna, smiled at me with the kind of knowing sympathy that made me wonder if I looked as anxious as I felt. "Anniversary?" she asked, packing the containers carefully. "Something like that." When I got home, Rebecca's Audi was already in the driveway. Inside, the house smelled like her citrus perfume and something else, wine. I found her in the living room, sitting on our gray sectional with a glass of Pinot Noir, still wearing her work clothes but barefoot now, her legs tucked underneath her. "I got Moretti's," I said, holding up the bag like a white flag. "Thanks." She took a sip of wine. "Can you sit down?" I sat, setting the food on the coffee table between us. Through the window, the early October sun was setting, casting long shadows across our carefully maintained lawn. We just had the trees trimmed last month. Everything looked so normal. "So," I started, trying to keep my voice light, "what's this about?" Rebecca took another drink, and I noticed her hand was steady now. Whatever had been making her nervous this morning had either resolved or she'd decided to commit to whatever came next. "The merger is entering its final phase," she said. "There's a dinner tomorrow night with Richard Chun, the CEO of the European company we're merging with. It's at the Pinnacle, that new restaurant downtown. Very exclusive, very important." I nodded, waiting. "Richard specifically requested that I attend. Just me from our team. It's unusual, but apparently he was impressed with my presentation last month. This is huge for my career, David. If I can help close this deal, I'm looking at a VP position. Maybe even C-suite eventually." "That's amazing," I said, and meant it. "I'm proud of you. There's a complication." She set down her wine glass with too much precision. "The dinner is scheduled to run late. Richard's flying back to Geneva Thursday morning, so this is the only window. It might go until midnight, maybe later. And," she paused, and in that pause, I felt something fundamental shift in the air between us. "He requested that I stay at the Pinnacle Hotel afterward. Same place as the restaurant. He's booked a room there, and he wants me to be available for any last-minute discussions in the morning before he leaves." The words hung there, crystallizing into something I couldn't quite process. "A room," I repeated slowly. "It's not like that," Rebecca said quickly, and there was the trembling again, just faint, in her voice this time. "It's completely professional. Richard is old-school European business. He does these marathon negotiation sessions, and he wants his team available around the clock during critical deals. My boss, Jennifer, said it's expected. She did the same thing during the last merger." I stared at her, trying to read her face, trying to understand what she was actually asking me, or telling me, because it didn't sound like she was asking. "You want to spend the night at a hotel with your CEO?" I said, making sure I had the facts straight. "Not with him. At the same hotel. It's not..." "David, don't be dramatic. It's just one night with my CEO. A business dinner that runs late. A hotel room so I can be available for morning meetings. This is how deals get done at this level. Don't be dramatic, David." That phrase. She'd used it before during other arguments that I'd somehow lost track of. When I'd questioned why she needed to go to that conference in Miami alone. When I'd asked about the late nights at the office. Don't be dramatic. As if my concerns were theatrical rather than legitimate. As if I was overreacting to things that were perfectly normal. Maybe I was. Maybe this was normal. Maybe this was just how high-powered business worked, and I was too much of a small-firm architect to understand the corporate world's expectations. "Okay," I heard myself say. Rebecca blinked. "Okay. Yeah, okay." The word felt hollow in my mouth, but what else was I supposed to say? Tell my wife she couldn't pursue her career? Forbid her from attending a crucial business dinner? That really would be dramatic. That would make me that guy, the insecure husband who couldn't handle his wife's success. You're sure? She was studying me now, and I couldn't quite read her expression. Relief? Surprise? Something else? I trust you, I said, and it was true. Or I wanted it to be true. Wasn't that the same thing? She smiled then, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Thank you. This means everything to me, David. This merger. It's what I've been working toward my entire career. We ate the Morettis in near silence, making small talk about the Henderson account, about Marcus and Tom's plans to adopt, about whether we should get the gutters cleaned before winter. Normal conversation. Married conversation. The kind of easy back and forth we'd perfected over 12 years. But I couldn't stop thinking about that hotel room. That night, Rebecca fell asleep easily, her breathing steady and rhythmic beside me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the October wind rattle the windows. My phone was on the nightstand, and I found myself reaching for it, opening the browser, typing Pinnacle Hotel New York into the search bar. The website loaded with glossy images of luxury suites, each more opulent than the last. The presidential suite went for $3,000 a night. The standard rooms started at $800. I tried to imagine Rebecca in one of those rooms, tried to picture her alone, reviewing spreadsheets and market analyses, preparing for morning meetings. The image wouldn't come. Instead, I kept seeing her trembling fingers, hearing "Don't be dramatic," feeling the weight of that too quick agreement. I said okay. I'd actually said okay to my wife spending the night at a hotel with her CEO. What kind of husband does that? The rational kind, I told myself. The trusting kind. The kind who doesn't let insecurity poison a marriage. But at 2 a.m., still awake, I pulled up Rebecca's company website. Richard Chen's bio was easy to find. He was the face of the merger, after all. 52 years old, educated at Oxford, previously served as CFO of 3 major European pharmaceutical companies. Married with 2 adult children. He looked distinguished in his professional photo, with silver temples and sharp features, the kind of man who commanded rooms just by entering them. I tried to feel better. This was a married man, a professional, someone with everything to lose. This was a business deal, nothing more. So why had Rebecca's fingers been trembling? Wednesday passed in slow motion. I went through the motions at work, reviewing blueprints for a new community center, taking calls about permits and zoning laws. Marcus asked me twice if I was feeling all right, and both times I lied and said I was fine. At lunch, I walked past the Pinnacle. I don't know why, it was 6 blocks out of my way, and I had no reason to be there. But I found myself standing across the street, staring up at its glass facade, counting floors. 47 stories of luxury accommodation, crowned with a rooftop restaurant that probably had views of the entire city. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Dinner's at 7. I'll probably turn my phone off to stay focused. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. 2 words that suddenly felt impossibly complicated. I texted back, good luck. You'll be amazing. That evening, I stayed late at the office, telling myself it was to finish the Henderson presentation, but really because I couldn't face going home to our empty house. Marcus found me at my desk at 9 o'clock, staring blankly at my computer screen. Go home, he said gently. Whatever's eating at you isn't going to be solved by staring at CAD drawings. Rebecca's at a business dinner, I said. Staying at a hotel downtown. Marcus pulled up a chair. Okay. She's with her CEO. Richard Chen, the guy running the merger. Okay, he said again, but his tone had changed slightly. It's professional, I added quickly. Just business. I'm being paranoid. Are you? The question hung there. Marcus wasn't the type to jump to conclusions or fan flames of suspicion. If anything, he was usually the voice of reason, the one who talked me down from my occasional spirals of worst-case scenario thinking. I don't know, I admitted. She asked me if it was okay, and I said yes, because what else could I say? You could have said no. Then I'm the controlling husband who doesn't trust his wife. Or you're the husband with normal concerns about an abnormal situation. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Look, I don't know Rebecca as well as you do, but I know you, and I've never seen you like this about anything. Your gut is telling you something. My gut has been wrong before. Has it? I thought about that. Had it? There was that time in college when I'd suspected my roommate of stealing my laptop, and I'd been right. The time I'd felt uneasy about a contractor we'd hired, and he'd nearly bankrupted a client with shoddy work. The time I'd sensed something off about a can't-miss investment opportunity, and it had turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. My gut had actually been pretty reliable. Go home, Marcus said again. Get some sleep. Tomorrow either you'll feel stupid for worrying, or you'll have your answer. I drove home through streets that suddenly felt unfamiliar, even though I'd traveled this route 1,000 times. Our house was dark except for the porch light Rebecca had left on. Inside, everything was exactly as we'd left it. The coffee mugs in the sink from this morning, her jacket draped over the chair, a book she'd been reading face down on the end table. Evidence of a life interrupted. I poured myself a scotch, Macallan 12, a bottle we'd been saving for special occasions, and sat in the dark living room, not bothering to turn on the lights. My phone sat on the coffee table, screen dark. Rebecca had said she'd turn hers off to stay focused. At 10:47 p.m., I opened the Find My Friends app. We'd added each other years ago, back when it was practical, so I'd know when she was leaving work, so she'd know when I was stuck in traffic. We'd never used it for surveillance. Until now. The app loaded, spinning its little circle of progress. Then, location not available. She turned off her location services. For a business dinner. I set down the phone like it had burned me. This was it. This was the moment where I either chose trust or suspicion. Where I either believed in 12 years of marriage or let paranoia poison everything we'd built. I chose trust. I had to. I went to bed at midnight, leaving my phone downstairs. If I was going to trust Rebecca, I had to actually trust her. Not check location services every 5 minutes. Not call the hotel. Not drive downtown and make a scene. Trust. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay in our bed, on my side of the mattress, acutely aware of the empty space beside me. The house made its usual settling noises, the creak of floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing. But everything felt wrong, like I was in a stage set of my own life rather than actually living it. At 2:15 a.m., I gave up and went back downstairs. My phone sat exactly where I'd left it, accusatory in its silence. No messages, no calls, nothing. I opened my laptop instead and did something I immediately regretted. I Googled Richard Chun Stratton and Hale scandal. The search returned dozens of results, but none of them were what I was looking for. Articles about the merger, profile pieces in Forbes and Bloomberg, analysis of the pharmaceutical industry's consolidation. All professional, all above board. Then, buried on page 3 of the results, I found something else. A blog post from 2 years ago, written by someone who'd worked at one of Richard Chen's previous companies. The post had been taken down, but Google's cache had preserved it. The title, The Real Cost of Climbing the Corporate Ladder. I clicked through, my heart hammering. The post was vague, carefully worded to avoid liability, but the implications were clear enough. The author, who used the pseudonym Corporate Climber, described a culture where promotions were tied to availability and dedication that went beyond normal business hours, where rising executives were expected to be flexible in ways that made my stomach turn. There were no specific accusations, no names mentioned besides Chen's. But the subtext was impossible to miss. I slammed the laptop shut, feeling sick. This was paranoia. This was me letting Google searches and ambiguous blog posts poison my marriage. Rebecca was not having an affair. She was attending a business dinner. This was all in my head. Except for those trembling fingers. Except for the changed perfume, the new workout clothes, the phone password, the location services turned off. Except for, don't be dramatic, David. At 6:30 a.m., still awake, still spiraling, my phone finally buzzed with a message from Rebecca. Dinner ran late, but very productive. Grabbing breakfast with Richard at 8 to finalize details. Should be home by noon. Miss you. Miss you. I stared at those words until they stopped making sense. She'd spent the night at the Pinnacle. She was having breakfast with Richard Chun. And she'd be home by noon, probably exhausted, probably expecting me to be supportive and understanding. I responded, "Great. See you soon." Then I got dressed, skipped shaving, and drove to the office. The Henderson presentation was today at 2, and I needed to pull myself together. I needed to stop letting my imagination run wild. I needed to be the professional, rational architect I'd always been. Marcus was already at his desk when I arrived at 7. "You look terrible," he said without preamble. "Didn't sleep much." "Hear from Rebecca? She's having breakfast with Chun. Home by noon." Marcus nodded slowly, processing this. "And you're here at 7 a.m., looking like you went 3 rounds with a heavyweight. Because I need to focus on Henderson. Because I need to stop obsessing about something that's probably completely innocent." "Probably. Definitely," I corrected. "Definitely innocent." But the morning crawled by in agony. I went through the Henderson presentation mechanically, fixing the slides Marcus had flagged, adding the financial projections the client had requested. Professional David, competent David, architect David. Not suspicious husband David. At 10:47 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something that gut instinct Marcus had mentioned made me pick up. "Is this David Morrison?" A woman's voice, professional, tense. "Speaking. This is Jennifer Albright. I'm Rebecca's supervisor at Stratton and Hale." My chest tightened. "Is everything okay? I need you to come to the Pinnacle Hotel immediately. We have a situation." "Rebecca is fine," she added quickly. "But we need you here. Now." "What kind of situation?" "Please, just come. Room 4217. She hung up before I could ask anything else. I stood frozen for a moment, phone in hand, trying to process. Rebecca was fine, but there was a situation. At the hotel. In room 4217. Marcus appeared in my doorway. "You're white as a sheet. What happened?" "Rebecca's boss just called. Wants me at the Pinnacle. Room 4217. "The hotel." "Yeah. I'm driving you," Marcus said, already grabbing his keys. "You're in no state to drive." The 20-minute trip downtown passed in a blur. Marcus asked questions I barely heard, offered theories I couldn't process. All I could think about was room 4217, about Jennifer Albright's tense voice, about "Rebecca is fine" followed by "we have a situation." The Pinnacle's lobby was everything the website had promised. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, the kind of understated luxury that screamed wealth. A concierge started to intercept us, but I was already at the elevator, stabbing the button for the 42nd floor. Marcus stayed close, a solid presence. "Whatever this is, we'll handle it." The elevator climbed with agonizing slowness. 42 floors. 4217. My hands were shaking now, just like Rebecca's had been yesterday morning. Had it only been yesterday? It felt like years ago, like I'd lived an entire lifetime since she'd asked me about this dinner. "Don't be dramatic, David." The hallway on the 42nd floor was hushed, expensive carpet muffling our footsteps. Room 4217 was at the end, its door slightly ajar. I could hear voices inside, multiple people talking urgently in low tones. I pushed open the door. The suite was chaos. Jennifer Albright stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, looking furious. 2 men in suits, lawyers from the look of them, were arguing by the desk. And Rebecca sat on the sofa, still wearing last night's clothes, her makeup smudged, her hair disheveled. She looked up when I entered, and her expression crumbled. "David," she breathed. But before I could move toward her, before I could ask what the hell was happening, a door to an adjoining room flew open and a man stormed in. Richard Chin. Though he looked nothing like his professional photos. His hair was wild, his shirt wrinkled, his face red with fury. "Which one of you is David Morrison?" he demanded. "I am," I said, instinctively stepping in front of Rebecca. "You," he pointed at me, his hand shaking with rage. "You son of a bitch. The merger's dead. Completely destroyed. $20 billion, hundreds of jobs, years of work. All gone. Because of you." I stared at him, completely lost. What are you talking about? Who the hell are you? Chun was advancing now, and one of the lawyers moved to intercept him. What's your company? Who do you work for? Which competitor bought you? I'm an architect, I said slowly. I run a small firm in Westchester. I have no idea what. He doesn't know. Rebecca stood abruptly. Richard, I told you. He doesn't know anything about this. Then explain, Chun snarled, how your husband is listed as the primary shareholder in Westbridge Pharmaceuticals. Explain how he owns 47% of our main competitor's stock. Explain how this merger would have eliminated his company's biggest rival and cost him approximately $300 million in market value. The room spun. What? I managed. Rebecca's face was streaming with tears now. David, I'm so sorry. I was trying to fix it. I thought if I could talk to Richard, if I could explain that you had nothing to do with the corporate side, that you didn't even know about the shares. What shares? I said, but my voice sounded distant, disconnected. Rebecca, what the fuck are you talking about? Jennifer ended her phone call and turned to face us. Mr. Morrison, I suggest you contact a lawyer. The SEC will likely be investigating whether you used your wife to conduct industrial espionage. The fact that she's been feeding you confidential information about our merger. I haven't, Rebecca shouted. I would never, Jennifer, you know me. I haven't told David anything about the merger details. He didn't even know I was working on pharmaceutical mergers until last month. Then how? Chun said, his voice dangerously quiet now. Did he know to invest in Westbridge 6 months before we announced our merger? How did he know to buy shares through a shell company, to hide his identity, to position himself to profit from our failure? Couldn't breathe. The room was closing in and nothing made sense. Westbridge Pharmaceuticals. I'd never heard of them. I didn't own any pharmaceutical stocks. I barely had a 401k, let alone $300 million in investments. There's been a mistake, I said. I don't own any shares in Morrison Capital Holdings. One of the lawyers interrupted, reading from a tablet. Registered in Delaware 6 months ago. Primary shareholder, David J. Morrison. Your middle name is James. Correct? Yes, but I didn't. The company purchased 47% of Westbridge Pharmaceuticals over a period of 3 months, using information that could only have come from someone with inside knowledge of our merger plans. The lawyer looked at Rebecca with disgust. Your wife had that information. I didn't tell him anything. Rebecca was sobbing now, makeup running down her face. I swear, David, I didn't think. I thought it was legitimate. You said it was family money, from your uncle's estate. What estate? I said. What are you talking about? Rebecca stopped, her face going pale. Your uncle, Charles. The one who died last year in Colorado. You said he left you money in trust, that you needed to invest it through a company to avoid tax implications. My Uncle Charles is alive and living in Phoenix, I said, my voice hollow. I don't have any uncle who died in Colorado. The room went silent. Oh God, Rebecca whispered, and suddenly, like tumblers clicking into place, everything made a horrible kind of sense. The changed perfume. A gift from someone, not a purchase. The new workout clothes, expensive, thoughtful, intimate. The phone password, protecting conversations with someone else. The trembling fingers. Guilt, not nervousness. Don't be dramatic. Gaslighting, deflection. The words of someone hiding something, but not an affair with Richard Chin. Who is he? I asked quietly. Rebecca crumpled onto the sofa, her face in her hands. Rebecca, I said, my voice harder now. Who the fuck is he? His name is Marcus, she whispered. The world stopped. What? Marcus Webb. I met him at a conference in Miami 9 months ago. He said he was a consultant, that he worked in private equity. We started talking, and he was so charming, so interested in my work. I didn't think. I thought it was just professional networking at first. Marcus, the conference in Miami. The one I'd questioned. The one where she told me, don't be dramatic. You're having an affair, I said. but the words felt abstract, disconnected from reality. Had, Rebecca said miserably. It ended 2 months ago. I realized what I was doing, how stupid I'd been. I broke it off. But then last week, he contacted me, said there was a problem with some investments he'd made in my name as a favor, tax-sheltered accounts that needed to be reconciled before the year end. He said he'd set them up using your information to keep everything within the family, to protect me from any scrutiny. And you believed him, Chun said, his voice dripping with contempt. I thought he was trying to help. He said it was all legitimate, that it was just paperwork, that David would never need to know because it was all properly structured. Rebecca looked up at me, her eyes desperate. I never told him anything about the merger. I swear, David. I never even mentioned Stratton and Hale. He must have researched me, figured out what I was working on. He used you, I said. It wasn't a question. The SEC is going to want to speak with you both, Jennifer said coldly. And legal counsel. This is securities fraud at minimum, possibly insider trading, corporate espionage. Even if you're telling the truth about not knowing Rebecca, your relationship with this Marcus Webb is going to look. I know how it looks, Rebecca said. I know what I did. But David didn't do anything. He's innocent. Innocent, I repeated and laughed. Came out sharp, bitter. Yeah, that's exactly what I am. The innocent husband who trusted his wife. Who said, okay, when she asked to spend the night at a hotel with her CEO. Who ignored every single red flag because I didn't want to be that guy. The dramatic one. David, did you sleep with him? I asked. Last night. Was that part of the plan? One last meeting with Chun. Try to charm him. Fix whatever Webb broke. No. Rebecca stood again. I was trying to warn Richard, to explain that something was wrong, that someone was using my information. Jennifer called you because when I told them about the fake estate, about Morrison Capital, they traced it back to you and thought. She choked on a sob. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I could just explain. You thought you could fix the affair you had by spending the night at a hotel with another man. I said. That's some interesting logic. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Rebecca? I was shouting now, months of suppressed suspicion finally exploding. Explain it to me. Explain how you met a man at a conference, started an affair, let him use you to commit fraud in my name, and then asked me not to be dramatic when you wanted to stay at a hotel to clean up the mess. I didn't know it was fraud. I thought. You didn't think. My voice dropped to something cold, something I didn't recognize. You didn't think about me, about our marriage, about anything except what you wanted. And now I'm implicated in securities fraud because you couldn't keep your legs closed at a conference. Rebecca flinched as if I'd struck her. Jennifer cleared her throat. Mr. Morrison, I suggest you both retain separate counsel. Whatever your personal issues, you're both facing serious legal consequences. The merger is dead. Our board pulled out an hour ago when Richard discovered the conflict of interest. Our European partners are threatening to sue for breach of contract. The stock is going to tank when this goes public. How did you find out? I asked Chin. About the shares. Due diligence, he said tiredly, the anger draining out of him now, replaced by something that looked like exhaustion. We do a final background check on all key personnel before signing the merger documents. Your wife's name flagged because of her access to sensitive information. When we dug deeper, we found Morrison Capital, found the Westbridge connection, found the timeline that perfectly aligned with your wife's promotion to the merger team. So you thought I was the mastermind. Can you blame me? Chun laughed harshly. A small-time architect married to a rising pharmaceutical executive, suddenly holding hundreds of millions in pharmaceutical stock through a shell company? It looked like textbook corporate espionage. But I'm just the fool, I said. The idiot husband who didn't notice his wife was fucking someone else. David, Rebecca whispered. Please. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman I'd married 12 years ago was gone, replaced by someone I didn't know, someone who could lie and cheat and rationalize it all away as somehow protecting me. I want a divorce, I said. Rebecca's face crumbled. Please, we can work through this. A divorce. I repeated. And your lawyer better be really fucking good, Rebecca, because I'm not going to prison for your affair. I turned to leave, but Marcus, my business partner, was standing in the doorway. He must have heard everything. His face was gray. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Take me home, I said. David, wait, Rebecca started. But I was already walking, already leaving, already trying to figure out how my life had imploded in the space of 24 hours. How I'd gone from worried husband to victim of fraud, from stable marriage to divorce, from ignorant contentment to this nightmare. The elevator ride down felt like descending into hell. Marcus didn't say anything, just stayed close. His presence a reminder that at least someone in my life was exactly who they claimed to be. We were almost to the lobby when my phone rang. Unknown number again. Morrison, I answered, my voice hollow. Mr. Morrison, this is Special Agent Patricia Holland with the FBI. I need you to come to our field office immediately. We have some questions about Morrison Capital Holdings and your relationship with a man named Marcus Webb. Of course the FBI was involved. Why not? Why the hell not? I'll be there within the hour, I said. I need to get a lawyer first. That would be advisable, sir. I ended the call and looked at Marcus. My Marcus, not the fraud who destroyed my life. You know any criminal defense attorneys? Tom's brother, he said immediately. Dan Richards. He's supposed to be one of the best white-collar defense lawyers in the state. Call him. Tell him I need him now. Tell him. I paused, trying to figure out how to summarize the catastrophe my life had become. Tell him I've been framed for securities fraud by my wife's affair partner. The next 6 hours were a blur of FBI interrogations, lawyer consultations, and the slow, agonizing process of proving I wasn't a corporate spy. Dan Richards turned out to be worth every penny of his astronomical retainer. Within 3 hours, he demonstrated that I'd never accessed Rebecca's work computer, never asked about the merger, never even Googled Westbridge Pharmaceuticals until this morning. You're clean, Agent Holland finally said, around 7 p.m. We've traced the Morrison Capital accounts. They were opened using your stolen identity, social security number, passport scan, the works. Your wife's boyfriend is Marcus Webb, real name Martin Weber, known con artist with a history of targeting corporate executives. He's done this before in London, in Singapore. Uses romantic relationships to access confidential information. Where is he now? I asked. Gone. Disappeared the day after your wife ended the relationship. We've got warrants out, Interpol's involved, but these guys are professionals. He's probably already operating under a new identity in a new city. And Rebecca? Agent Holland's expression hardened. She's facing obstruction charges for not reporting the relationship when she realized something was wrong. The SEC is still deciding whether to pursue insider trading charges. Even if she didn't intentionally provide information, she created the access point. That's a federal crime. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty. Dan drove me home around 9 p.m. The house was dark. Rebecca still at the FBI office with her own lawyer. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt like a museum of my former life. Wedding photos on the mantle. Her coffee mug still in the sink from yesterday morning. Everything exactly as it had been, except nothing would ever be the same. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. I'm staying at my sister's tonight. I'm so sorry, David, for everything. You deserved better than this. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, yes, I did. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in Marcus's office when the news broke. Stratton and Hale's merger had officially collapsed, costing both companies billions in valuation. Rebecca had been terminated and was facing a civil lawsuit from the company. Martin Weber had been arrested in Buenos Aires, extradited to face charges. And me, the architect who'd stumbled into a corporate espionage plot without even knowing it? You're famous, Marcus said, spinning his laptop around to show me the Wall Street Journal headline, Innocent husband caught in pharmaceutical fraud scheme. Great, just what I always wanted. Henderson called this morning, Marcus continued. They want to move forward with the community center. Said they appreciated your integrity under pressure. Whatever that means. I laughed bitterly. Integrity. Sure. You know it wasn't your fault, right? Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. You trusted your wife. That's not a character flaw. No, but being blind to all the signs is. You weren't blind. You were married. There's a difference. Maybe there was. Maybe 12 years of building a life together had earned her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe saying okay to that hotel dinner wasn't weakness. It was the last act of faith in a marriage that was already over. I just hadn't known it yet. The divorce papers came through on a gray December morning. Rebecca had signed everything without contest. She kept nothing except her car and her legal debts. The house, the savings, everything else was mine. A consolation prize for having my life destroyed. I thought I'd feel something when I signed my name on that final page. Relief, maybe. Closure. Instead, there was just the same hollow emptiness that had been my constant companion since that morning at the Pinnacle. Until my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Morrison? This is Catherine Webb. My hand tightened on the phone. I don't know any. Martin Webber's sister. I know who he is, what he's done. I've been trying to find him for 3 years. Her voice was strained, urgent. I need to tell you something about your wife. Something the FBI doesn't know. What are you talking about? Rebecca contacted Martin 6 months ago, not the other way around. She found him through a private investigator, sought him out specifically because of his history with corporate fraud. Mr. Morrison, your wife wasn't a victim. She was a partner. The world tilted again. That's impossible. She was devastated when her plan fell apart, yes. She thought Martin would help her quietly profit from inside information about the merger. Small trades, nothing traceable. But Martin got greedy, went bigger than she'd agreed to. When the SEC started circling, she panicked and played the victim. Made it look like an affair gone wrong instead of a premeditated scheme. Why are you telling me this? Because Martin's taking the fall for everything, and Rebecca's going to walk away with a slap on the wrist. And because... She paused. Because my brother destroys lives, but he doesn't usually do it alone. The people he partners with are as guilty as he is. Your wife knew exactly what she was doing. After she hung up, I sat there holding my phone, thinking about trembling fingers and don't be dramatic, and a woman who'd looked me in the eye and lied so convincingly that I doubted my own instincts. I thought about calling Agent Holland, about pursuing this new information. I thought about revenge, about justice, about making Rebecca pay for what she'd done. Instead, I deleted the number and got back to work on the Henderson blueprints. Because here's what I'd learned. Some truths don't set you free. Some truths just show you how much of your life was built on sand. And sometimes, the only way forward is to accept that you'll never fully know what was real and what was performance. Rebecca got 18 months probation and a fine she'd be paying off for years. Martin Webber got 7 years in federal prison. The merger stayed dead, and Stratton and Hale's stock never recovered. And me? I sold the house, moved to a smaller place closer to the office, and slowly rebuilt something that felt like a life. Not the life I'd planned, not the marriage I'd believed in, but something honest, something real. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter from Rebecca. No return address, just a single page. David, I know you'll never believe me, but I did love you. Maybe not enough or maybe not in the right way, but I did. What I did was unforgivable. I told myself I was securing our future, but really I was just greedy and scared. Scared that I'd never be enough, never achieve enough, never be the person I thought I should be. I destroyed us because I couldn't accept what we had. I'm sorry doesn't cover it. Nothing covers it. But I am sorry. I hope you find someone who deserves what you gave me. I read it once, then burned it in the kitchen sink, watching the paper curl and blacken and disappear into ash. Some stories don't get neat endings. Some betrayals don't come with cathartic confrontations or satisfying revenge. Sometimes you just say okay to the wrong thing at the wrong time, and your entire world changes in ways you never see coming. But here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. You survive it. Not because you're strong, Not because you find closure, but because life keeps moving forward whether you're ready or not. You wake up one morning and realize you haven't thought about her in hours, then days. Then you meet someone new, someone who notices when your coffee order changes, who tells you the truth even when it's hard, who never asks you to ignore your instincts. And maybe, eventually, you learn to say okay again. But this time, you make sure you're saying it to the right person. I still drive past the pinnacle sometimes. 47 stories of glass and steel and secrets. I don't think about that morning anymore, about the moment my life split into before and after. Instead, I think about the moment I walked out, when I chose to leave rather than accept the unacceptable. That's the thing about saying okay to the wrong thing. It teaches you when to say no. And that's worth more than any marriage built on lies.